The great chamber stretched out like a metal cave, filled with the strange sounds of alien voices. President Sarah Chen sat at the small human table, watching creatures that looked like walking crystals argue with beings made of pure energy. The air smelled like metal and ozone, and the lights hurt her eyes. For 3 months now, she had been listening to the same complaints over and over again. The aliens said humans were taking too much space. They said humans were building too many colonies. They said humans were dangerous and needed to be controlled. Chen looked at the translator box on her table. It turned the alien words into English, but she could hear the anger in their voices even without understanding their languages. The Zeltharian ambassador stood 20 feet tall, his crystal body catching the light as he pointed one sharp finger at the human delegation. "The humans have violated the sacred boundaries," the translator said in its flat computer voice. "They build their colonies where they should not. They take what is not theirs. They must be stopped." Other aliens nodded their various heads. Some had tentacles instead of arms. Others floated in the air like glowing clouds. All of them seemed to agree that humans were the problem. Admiral Rodriguez sat next to Chen. His weathered face showed no emotion, but she could see his jaw muscles working. He was angry too, but he kept it hidden like a good soldier. They both knew this was not really a trial or a discussion. This was something else entirely. The Galactic Council had been meeting for thousands of years before humans even learned to fly. These alien races had divided up the galaxy among themselves long ago. Now humans came along, spreading to new worlds, and the aliens did not like it one bit. Chen remembered when humanity first joined the Council 5 years ago. The aliens had seemed friendly then. They gave humans a small voice in the meetings and promised to help Earth learn the ways of galactic civilization. But humans learned fast. Maybe too fast for the aliens' comfort. Human colonies grew quickly. Human ships went to places the aliens thought were worthless. Human miners found metals and crystals that the aliens had missed. Human farmers grew food on worlds the aliens said were too harsh for life. In just 5 years, humans had claimed more territory than some alien races had taken in centuries. Now the aliens wanted to put humans back in their place. The Keithian war speaker stood up next. His race looked like giant insects covered in metal armor. When he spoke, his words sounded like grinding machinery even through the translator. "Humans are a warrior race," he said. "They fight each other on their homeworld. They will bring war to peaceful space. The Council must act before they become too strong." Chen wanted to laugh. Peaceful space? She had read the intelligence reports. The Keithian hegemony had been at war with somebody almost constantly for the past 200 years. The Zeltharians had glassed 3 worlds in the past decade alone. And these aliens talked about humans being violent? The truth was simpler. Humans were new and they were successful. That made the old alien empires nervous. A creature that looked like a floating jellyfish began to speak. Its voice came through the translator as whispers and echoes. "The ethereal collective has studied human psychology," it said. "Humans are primitive. They respond to emotion rather than logic. They cannot be trusted to govern themselves in civilized space. They need guidance from older, wiser races." Admiral Rodriguez leaned over to whisper in Chen's ear. "The intelligence reports came in this morning. They have 12 battle fleets moving toward our outer colonies. They're not planning to guide us. They're planning to invade us." Chen nodded slightly. She had expected this. The aliens had been talking for 3 months, but their actions told a different story. Keithian warships were gathering near human space. Zeltarian defense platforms were being moved into position. The ethereal collective had stopped all trade with human colonies. This was not a trial. This was a distraction. While the aliens kept humans busy with endless meetings and speeches, they were preparing for war. The session went on for hours. Alien after alien stood up to complain about human expansion. They showed star maps with human colonies marked in red. They played recordings of human ships in space. They read lists of worlds that humans had claimed. Chen listened to it all with growing anger. Not one alien had mentioned that humans only settled on empty worlds. Not one had talked about how humans had actually improved many of the places they colonized. Not one had admitted that human technology had solved problems that had troubled the galaxy for centuries. No, the aliens only wanted to talk about human crimes, human aggression, human greed, human danger to the peaceful order of space. The Zeltharian ambassador was speaking again. His crystal body flashed with angry light as he gestured toward the human table. "Humans reproduce too quickly," he said. Human colonies grow too fast. If we allow this to continue, they will outnumber all other races within a century. The ancient balance of power will be destroyed. There it was. The real reason for this whole charade. The aliens were not afraid of human violence or human greed. They were afraid of human success. Humans did reproduce quickly compared to most alien races. Human colonies did grow fast. Human technology did advance rapidly. In a galaxy where some races took centuries to make simple decisions, humans moved at lightning speed, and that terrified the aliens who had ruled space for so long. As the day's session ended, Chen stood up slowly. Her back ached from sitting in the uncomfortable alien chairs. Her head hurt from breathing the recycled air. But her mind was clear. She looked around the great chamber at all the alien representatives. Some were already leaving, floating or walking or sliding toward the exits. Others stood in small groups talking in their strange languages about the human problem. Tomorrow they would meet again. More aliens would give more speeches about human crimes. More evidence would be presented about human expansion. More demands would be made for human submission to alien authority. But Chen knew it would not matter what she said in response. The aliens had already made their decision. The vote would come soon, probably within days. And when it did, it would not be close. The aliens would vote to authorize force against human colonies. They would call it peacekeeping or protective intervention or some other pretty name, but it would be war. Admiral Rodriguez walked beside her as they left the chamber. Neither of them spoke until they were back in their private shuttle, flying through the strange alien city toward their temporary quarters. "How long do we keep playing this game?" Rodriguez asked. Chen looked out the window at the towers of crystal and metal that stretched toward the alien sky. Somewhere up there, in offices and meeting rooms she would never see, aliens were planning the destruction of human civilization. "Not much longer," she said. "They think they know what humans are like. They think they understand what we will do when they attack. Do they?" Rodriguez asked. Chen smiled for the first time in days. It was not a pleasant smile. "No," she said. "They have no idea what they're about to face." The shuttle flew on through the alien night carrying two humans who knew that everything was about to change. Behind them, the great chamber stood empty and dark, waiting for tomorrow's final act in the diplomatic charade. The aliens thought they were so clever. They thought they had humans trapped and helpless. They thought wrong. The chamber was fuller today. Word had spread that the council would finally vote on the human question. Alien representatives filled every seat, and more floated in the air above or clung to the walls with tentacles and claws. President Chen sat in the same uncomfortable chair, watching the Kethian war speaker present his evidence. Holographic images floated above the center of the room, showing human military bases and weapon factories. The pictures had been taken by spy satellites and stealth ships that thought humans could not detect them. "Observe the human preparations for war," the war speaker said. His insect-like face clicked and buzzed as he spoke. "They build weapons while claiming to want peace. They train soldiers while sitting in our council chambers. They speak of cooperation while preparing for conquest." Chen had to admit the pictures were impressive. The aliens had found most of the obvious human military installations. They had counted ships and weapons and soldiers. They had mapped defensive positions and supply lines. What they had not found was far more important, but Chen kept her face blank. Let them think they knew everything. Let them believe their intelligence was complete. The ethereal collective's representative spoke next. Its jellyfish body pulsed with different colors as it projected thoughts directly into the translator system. "Human minds are chaotic and violent," it said in its whispering voice. "We have studied their psychology extensively. They cannot be reasoned with when threatened. They will fight even when defeat is certain. They must be controlled before they spread this madness to other races." More aliens stood to speak. The crystal-bodied Zeltharians showed energy readings from human colonies. The machine-like synthetics presented mathematical models of human expansion. The gas cloud beings called the Nebula Folk played recordings of human communications. All of it painted the same picture. Humans were dangerous. Humans were unpredictable. Humans were a threat to the ancient order of galactic civilization. Chen listened to hours of testimony about human aggression and human militarism. She heard herself and her species described as primitive warmongers who would destroy the peace of space if they were not stopped immediately. Finally, the speeches ended. The council's ancient voting ritual began. One by one, the alien races announced their positions. The Keithian hegemony voted for immediate military intervention. The HFY Empire agreed. The synthetic collective calculated that force was necessary. The ethereal collective saw no alternative to war. Race after race voted the same way. Military action against human colonies, protective intervention in human space, peacekeeping forces to maintain galactic stability. Only 3 races voted against the measure. The Traders' Union, who made too much money from human commerce to want war. The Research Academy, who found human science fascinating. And the small Gardner Collective, who respected any race that could make barren worlds bloom with life. 34 votes for war. 3 votes for peace. The chamber erupted in alien sounds of approval. Clicks and buzzes and musical tones filled the air. The matter was settled. The council had spoken. War was authorized. Chen stood up slowly. The chamber began to quiet as aliens noticed her movement. By the time she reached the center podium, the great room was silent except for the hum of machinery and the whisper of air recyclers. She looked around at the assembled representatives. Hundreds of alien eyes, sensors, and perception organs focused on her. They expected her to beg for mercy now. They thought she would offer desperate concessions to avoid the coming war. Chen's voice was calm and clear as she spoke into the silence. For 3 months, I have sat in this chamber listening to your concerns about human expansion. We have heard your fears about human aggression. We have listened to your demands for human submission to your authority. She paused, letting her words echo through the vast space. During these 3 months, humanity has made every reasonable effort to address your concerns. We offered to limit our expansion rate. We proposed joint colonies with alien oversight. We suggested trade agreements and technology sharing. We even offered to accept council observers on our most sensitive military installations. The aliens shifted uncomfortably. Some had forgotten about the human offers of compromise. Others had dismissed them as meaningless gestures. But you were never interested in compromise, were you? Chen continued. You have been moving military forces toward human space since before these meetings began. You have positioned invasion fleets around our colonies. You have prepared for war while pretending to negotiate for peace. The Keithian war speaker started to protest. But Chen's voice cut through his mechanical buzzing. You think you know what humans are like. You think you understand our nature. You believe we are primitive creatures who will surrender when faced with superior force. Chen's smile was cold as winter starlight. You have studied our psychology. You have analyzed our behavior. You have calculated our military strength. But you have missed the most important thing about humanity. The chamber was dead silent now. Even the machinery seemed to hold its breath. You want to know what humans are really like? You want to see our true nature? You want to understand why your ancestors should have left us alone on our little blue world? Chen's voice rose, carrying to every corner of the great chamber. We tried diplomacy because that is what civilized beings do. We offered compromise because that is what reasonable people do. We sought peace because that is what we prefer. She paused, looking directly at the Keithian war speaker. But you have already made your choice. You want a war. You think we are weak. You believe we will crumble at the first sign of real opposition. The smile on Chen's face grew wider and far more dangerous. Very well. You have voted for war. You have chosen violence over negotiation. You have decided that might makes right in this galaxy. Admiral Rodriguez had stood up at the human table. His hand rested on his sidearm, though he made no move to draw it. Other human aides and advisors were also standing, their faces grim but determined. Chen's final words rang through the chamber like a declaration of thunder. Enough talking. Let's start the war. The silence that followed was deafening. Alien representatives looked at each other in confusion and growing alarm. This was not the response they had expected. Humans were supposed to beg for mercy, not issue challenges. Chen turned and walked back toward the human table. Her delegation fell in behind her, moving with military precision toward the chamber's exit. The Zeltharian ambassador found his voice first. President Chen, surely you cannot mean... Chen stopped and looked back at the crystal being. I mean exactly what I said. You want to see what humans are really like when pushed to war? You want to test our resolve and our capabilities? You want to measure your superior technology and ancient wisdom against our primitive aggression? Her voice echoed through the chamber one final time. Congratulations. You are about to get your wish. The human delegation left the chamber in perfect formation, their footsteps echoing like drumbeats in the sudden silence. Behind them, Hundreds of alien representatives sat frozen in shock and dawning fear. They had expected surrender. They had planned for capitulation. They had prepared for easy victory over a young and inexperienced race. Instead, they had just declared war on the most dangerous species the galaxy had ever seen. They just did not know it yet. The great chamber remained silent for a long time after the humans left. When the aliens finally began to speak again, their voices were full of uncertainty and growing dread. The war they thought would be over in weeks was about to teach them things about humanity that would haunt their nightmares for generations to come. Admiral Kethvar commanded the greatest battle fleet in Kethian history. 800 warships followed his flagship through the dark space between stars, heading toward the human home system. The fleet was so large it took 3 hours for all the ships to pass through a single jump point. Kethvar stood in his command chamber, studying the tactical displays with satisfaction. His intelligence officers had counted only 200 human warships in the entire Sol system. The humans had some orbital defense platforms, but nothing that could stop a force this size. The plan was simple. Jump into the outer edge of the human system, demand immediate surrender, and when the humans refused, destroy their military forces in a quick battle. After that, the human government would have no choice but to accept council authority. It would be over in days, maybe hours. The humans were young and inexperienced. They had never fought a real war against an advanced alien civilization. When they saw the size of the Kethian fleet, they would understand how hopeless their situation was. "Admiral, we are approaching the jump point to the Sol system," reported his navigation officer. "All ships, prepare for battle deployment," Kethvar ordered. "Remember, we want to disable their ships if possible. Dead humans cannot work in our labor camps." The fleet jumped into normal space at the edge of the solar system. Sensors immediately began scanning for human vessels and defensive positions. What they found made no sense at all. "Admiral?" The sensor officer's voice was confused and frightened. "I am detecting massive energy signatures throughout the system. Far more than our intelligence indicated." Kethavar's 4 eyes focused on the main display screen. What he saw there changed everything. The space around them was full of human ships. Not hundreds of ships. Thousands of ships. They emerged from behind asteroids and moons, rose up from the surface of planets, and uncloaked from positions throughout the system. "How many?" Kethvar demanded. "Still counting, Admiral. Over 3,000 confirmed contacts and more appearing every second." That was impossible. Human space could not support that many warships. Their entire civilization was barely 2 centuries old. They did not have the resources or the technology to build such a massive fleet. But the sensor readings did not lie. The human ships were there, real and solid and armed with weapons that were already beginning to lock onto Kethian targets. A communication signal reached the flagship. The face that appeared on the screen was an older human male, wearing the uniform of Earth's military. His gray hair was cut short and his eyes were hard as steel. "I am Admiral Rodriguez of the Earth Defense Force," the human said. "You have entered our territory with hostile intent. You have 30 seconds to withdraw, or we will consider your presence an act of war." Kethvar laughed, a harsh clicking sound that filled his command chamber. "Human, you are outnumbered and outgunned. We represent the authority of the Galactic Council. Surrender immediately and your deaths will be quick." Admiral Rodriguez smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. "You wanted to see human nature, Admiral. Here it is." The communication ended. A second later, every human ship in the system opened fire. Kethvar had fought in dozens of battles across 3 centuries of warfare. He understood space combat better than any Kethian alive. But what happened next broke every rule of military science he had ever learned. The human ships moved wrong. Instead of forming orderly battle lines like civilized races, they swarmed around the Kethian fleet like angry insects. They used the gravity of planets and moons to achieve impossible speeds, slingshotting around celestial bodies to attack from unexpected angles. Human weapons were wrong too. Instead of the standard plasma cannons and particle beams that every advanced race used, the humans threw rocks. Actual asteroids, accelerated to incredible speeds by magnetic launchers. The kinetic impact of a mountain-sized rock moving at a significant fraction of light speed could destroy any ship ever built. But the worst part was how the humans fought. They showed no fear, no hesitation, no mercy. Kethian ships that tried to surrender were ignored. Damaged vessels that attempted to retreat were hunted down and destroyed. The humans fought like creatures that enjoyed the act of killing. "Admiral, the carrier Bone Crusher is reporting massive hull breaches," his communications officer reported. "The dreadnought Death's Hand has lost main power. The escort squadron covering our port flank has been completely destroyed." Kethvar watched his beautiful fleet being torn apart by creatures he had thought were primitive savages. Human ships darted between his heavy vessels like small fish among sharks, too fast and agile for the Kethian gunners to track effectively. One human vessel, much smaller than his flagship, came directly at them through a storm of defensive fire. Kethvar watched in amazement as the tiny ship avoided every shot, using debris from destroyed vessels as cover. "What are they doing?" he demanded. "Unknown, Admiral. The ship appears to be on a collision course. Destroy it." Every weapon on the flagship opened fire at the approaching human vessel. Plasma bolts and particle beams filled the space around it, but somehow the ship kept coming. At the last second, it spun away from the flagship's hull and dropped something against the armor. "What did they—" Kethvar began. The explosion tore a hole in his flagship's side big enough to fly a shuttle through. Emergency alarms screamed throughout the ship as atmosphere and crew members were sucked into space. "Boarding charges," his tactical officer reported in disbelief. "They are using old-fashioned explosives attached to our hull." The humans were fighting like pirates and barbarians, using tactics that no civilized military would consider. They turned asteroids into weapons, used debris fields for cover, and somehow made their ships maneuver in ways that defied physics. Worse, they were winning. "Admiral, we have lost over 200 ships," his operations officer reported. "Enemy casualties appear minimal. They are coordinating their attacks with perfect precision." Perfect precision. That was the most terrifying part. Despite fighting like wild animals, the humans showed perfect military coordination. Every attack was timed to maximum effect. Every maneuver supported their overall strategy. They were not primitive savages at all. They were a highly advanced military force that chose to fight dirty because it worked. 6 hours after the battle began, Admiral Kethvar found himself commanding the survivors of his once mighty fleet as they limped away from the Sol system. Of his 800 ships, fewer than 50 remained combat effective. The humans had suffered losses too, but far fewer than they should have. Their ships were better armored than expected, their crews more skilled, their weapons more effective. Everything the Kethian intelligence services had reported about human military capabilities was wrong. As his damaged flagship jumped away from the human system, Kethvar received one final message from Admiral Rodriguez. "Tell your council what you saw here today. Tell them what happens when you bring war to humanity, and tell them this was just the beginning." The communication ended, leaving Kethvar alone with the wreckage of his fleet and his pride. He had brought the greatest military force in Kethian history to crush a young and inexperienced race. Instead, the humans had taught him that experience was not the same as wisdom, and that sometimes the most dangerous opponent was the one who refused to follow the rules. As his sensors detected human ships beginning to pursue his fleeing vessels, Kethvar realized the true horror of what he had unleashed. The humans were not content to simply defend their territory. They were coming after him. The war had begun, and already it was nothing like what anyone had expected. Behind him in the Sol system, Admiral Rodriguez stood on the bridge of his flagship and watched the alien ships flee. Around him, his officers celebrated their victory with quiet satisfaction. "Shall we pursue, Admiral?" his tactical officer asked. Rodriguez smiled and looked at the star charts showing Kethian space. "Oh yes. But not just to chase them away. It's time to show the galaxy what humans do to people who attack our families." The real war was about to begin, and the aliens had no idea what they had awakened. The first reports reached the Galactic Council 3 days after the Battle of Sol. Admiral Kethvar's broken transmission was barely coherent, filled with impossible claims about human fleet sizes and devastating losses to the Kethian armada. The council members dismissed it as the ravings of a defeated commander trying to excuse his failure. 800 ships could not be destroyed by a primitive human fleet. The reports had to be exaggerated, the casualties inflated to cover military incompetence. Then the second wave of reports arrived. Human fleets had attacked simultaneously across 12 different star systems. Kethian military bases were under siege. Seltharian crystal cities were burning. Synthetic manufacturing worlds had gone silent. The impossible was happening everywhere at once. In the council chambers, panic replaced the confident discussions of human surrender. How had the humans moved so many ships so quickly? Where had they gotten the technology for such coordinated attacks? How had they hidden their true military strength so completely? The ethereal collective's representative pulsed with confused colors as it tried to process the incoming intelligence. Human psychology does not support such strategic thinking, it whispered. They are supposed to be emotional and impulsive. This level of planning requires centuries of preparation. That was exactly the problem. Humans had been preparing for centuries, but not in the way anyone expected. Captain Elena Vasquez commanded the human assault on Zeltarian Prime, the Crystal Empire's most heavily defended world. Her fleet had emerged from hyperspace inside the system's asteroid belt, a maneuver that every alien military manual said was impossible and suicidal. The asteroids provided perfect cover for the human ships. More importantly, they provided ammunition. Target the largest crystal formations, Vasquez ordered her weapons officer. Use the magnetic launchers to accelerate those iron-nickel asteroids to maximum velocity. The Zeltharian defense grid was designed to stop energy weapons and missile attacks. It was not prepared for mountain-sized rocks traveling at 20% of light speed. The first asteroid impact shattered a defense platform that had protected the crystal world for 1,000 years. Captain, the Zeltharians are broadcasting surrender offers, her communications officer reported. Vasquez studied the tactical display. The crystal beings were offering to negotiate, to discuss terms, to find a peaceful solution to the conflict. Remind them that they had 3 months to negotiate, she said coldly. They chose war instead. Now they get to see what war looks like. The human fleet systematically dismantled the Zeltharian defenses with brutal efficiency. Every time the crystal beings tried to surrender, the humans ignored them. Every plea for mercy was met with more asteroid bombardment. This was not the civilized warfare that galactic races had practiced for millennia. This was total war, fought by creatures who understood that the enemy had tried to destroy their entire civilization. On the far side of Keithian space, Admiral Chen Wang was demonstrating another aspect of human warfare that the aliens had never encountered. His fleet did not engage in grand battles or siege warfare. Instead, they struck like ghosts, appearing without warning to destroy supply convoys and communication stations. The Keithians are trying to reinforce their core worlds, Wang's intelligence officer reported. 3 major fleets are converging on their capital system. Wang smiled as he studied the enemy movement patterns. The Keithians were thinking like traditional military commanders, concentrating their forces to defend their most important worlds. That kind of strategy worked against other aliens who fought the same way. It did not work against humans. Signal the stealth squadrons, Wang ordered. While they're moving ships to defend their capital, we're going to cut their supply lines. A fleet without fuel and ammunition is just expensive scrap metal. Human ships appeared throughout Kethian territory like deadly phantoms. They emerged from gas giant atmospheres where no ship should be able to hide. They attacked from inside nebulae that alien sensors could not penetrate. They used gravitational slingshots around neutron stars to achieve speeds that made them nearly impossible to intercept. Worst of all, they seemed to enjoy the chaos of battle. Human crews laughed and cheered as they destroyed enemy vessels. They turned warfare into a deadly sport, competing to see who could achieve the most creative kills. The synthetic collective tried to counter human tactics with mathematical precision. Their artificial intelligence calculated optimal defensive positions and predicted human attack patterns. It should have worked. Machine logic should have been superior to human emotion and intuition. But humans did not fight logically. They made decisions that no computer could predict. They took risks that any rational analysis would reject. They turned their supposed weaknesses into devastating advantages. Commander Sarah Kim led the assault on the synthetic core world, a planet covered entirely by machine cities and manufacturing centers. Her ships dove through the planet's atmosphere, using the air itself as cover against enemy sensors. They say synthetics are trying to establish a defensive perimeter around their central processing facility, her tactical officer reported. Kim studied the enemy positions with predatory interest. The machines had formed perfect defensive lines, with overlapping fields of fire and optimal spacing between units. It was exactly what their programming told them to do. Drop the gravity bombs, Kim ordered. The weapons fell through the planet's atmosphere like metal rain. When they detonated, they did not explode in the traditional sense. Instead, they created localized gravity, fields strong enough to crush buildings and tear apart the carefully organized machine formations. The synthetics had never encountered weapons that used gravity as a destructive force. Their shields and armor were designed to stop energy and kinetic attacks, not the fundamental forces of physics themselves. Within hours, the machine world's defenses had collapsed. The synthetic collective's central processing facility, which had coordinated their entire civilization for thousands of years, was reduced to twisted metal and sparking circuits. News of the defeats spread through alien space like a plague. The humans were not just winning battles. They were destroying entire civilizations with casual efficiency. President Chen monitored the war's progress from her mobile command center, a massive ship that served as both military headquarters and diplomatic facility. Reports flowed in from every front, each one detailing another human victory. The Keithian government is requesting a ceasefire, her chief of staff reported. They want to negotiate a peaceful settlement. Chen looked at the star charts showing human fleet positions throughout alien space. In just 3 weeks, humanity had gone from defending a single system to threatening the heart of multiple galactic empires. "Tell them we'll consider their request," she said, "after we finish what they started." The aliens had spent 3 months talking about human aggression and primitive violence. They had voted for war, believing that superior technology and ancient wisdom would ensure easy victory. Now they were learning what human aggression really looked like when unleashed. Against an enemy that had tried to destroy their civilization, they were discovering that sometimes primitive violence was more effective than advanced tactics. Most importantly, they were realizing that they had awakened something in humanity that could not be easily put back to sleep. The war that was supposed to last days had become a nightmare that consumed entire star systems. And the humans were just getting started. Admiral Rodriguez broadcast a message to every alien world in the galaxy, transmitted on every frequency and in every language. You wanted to see what humans are capable of when pushed to war. You wanted to test our resolve and measure our strength. Congratulations. You're getting a complete demonstration. His face was calm, but his eyes burned with cold fire. This could have been avoided. We offered peace, compromise, and cooperation. You chose violence instead. Now you get to live with the consequences of that choice. The message ended, leaving billions of alien beings to contemplate the horror they had unleashed upon themselves. The galaxy was learning that there were worse things than human expansion and human colonies. There was human vengeance, human warfare, and human determination to finish what others had started. And the lesson was far from over. 18 months after President Chen declared war in the council chambers, the same alien representatives gathered again. But this time, they met aboard the human dreadnought Indomitable, orbiting the ruins of what had once been the Keithian capital world. The great warship was 10 kilometers long and bristled with weapons that had never existed in alien nightmares. Its hull was scarred from dozens of battles, but it flew proudly through space like a monument to human determination. President Chen sat at the head of a long conference table in the ship's diplomatic section. Around her sat Admiral Rodriguez, Fleet Commander Vasquez, and other human military leaders whose names had become legends of terror throughout alien space. Across from them, the alien representatives looked very different than they had 18 months ago. The proud Keithian war speaker now wore the simple robes of a defeated enemy. His insect-like eyes were dull with exhaustion and despair. The crystal body of the Zeltharian ambassador had several dark cracks running through it, scars from the psychological trauma of watching his civilization burn. The ethereal collective's representative had dimmed to a pale shadow of its former glory. The machine delegates from the synthetic collective moved with jerky, uncertain motions, their programming still struggling to process the concept of total defeat. "The terms are quite simple," Chen said, sliding a datapad across the table. "Full reparations for the unprovoked attack on human space. Recognition of all human territorial claims, including the systems you said we could never have. Immediate withdrawal of all military forces from the border regions." The Keithian delegate's claws clicked nervously against the table surface. "These terms. They will bankrupt our empire. Our people will suffer for generations." Chen's expression did not change. "Your people chose to attack our families. They chose to vote for war when we offered peace. They chose to believe that might makes right in this galaxy. Now they get to live with the consequences of those choices. Admiral Rodriguez leaned forward, his weathered face showing no sympathy for the defeated aliens. You could have had peace 18 months ago. You could have accepted our offers of compromise and cooperation. Instead, you decided to teach us a lesson about galactic politics. His smile was cold as space itself. Consider the lesson learned. The ethereal collective's representative pulsed with weak, confused colors. Human psychology still makes no sense to us. Your species showed mercy to civilian populations. You avoided targeting non-military installations. Yet you fought with such ferocity against our military forces. We told you from the beginning that we preferred peace, Chen replied. We also told you what would happen if you chose war instead. You didn't believe us then. Do you believe us now? The alien fell silent, its jellyfish body dimming even further. The negotiations continued for days, but the outcome was never in doubt. The aliens had lost the war so completely that they had no choice but to accept whatever terms humanity offered. The final treaty was surprisingly moderate, considering what the humans could have demanded. No enslaved populations, no occupied worlds, no demands for total surrender. The aliens would pay for the damage they had caused, respect human territorial claims, and restructure the Galactic Council to give humanity a voice proportional to their new status as the dominant military power in the galaxy. Why? The synthetic delegate asked as the documents were signed. Your victory was total. You could have demanded our complete submission. You could have ruled us as conquered subjects. Why show restraint now? Chen looked out the observation window at the stars beyond. Somewhere out there, human colonies were expanding into former alien territory. Human ships patrolled space lanes that had been controlled by other races for thousands of years. Human engineers were rebuilding the worlds that had been damaged in the fighting. Because we never wanted an empire, she said finally. We wanted to be left alone to build our civilization in peace. We wanted to explore the galaxy and make friends with other intelligent races. We wanted to share our knowledge and learn from yours. She turned back to face the alien delegates. You decided that wasn't possible. You forced us to prove that we could take whatever we wanted by force. Now that we've proven it, we can go back to building instead of destroying. The Zeltharian ambassador's crystal body flickered with weak light. And if we violate this treaty? If we try to rebuild our military forces and challenge human dominance? President Chen's smile was gentle, but her eyes were hard as diamond. Then you'll discover that this war was just a demonstration. Next time we won't show restraint. The message was clear. Humanity had held back during the war. They had shown mercy to civilians, avoided unnecessary destruction, and focused their violence only on military targets. It had still been enough to crush the greatest powers in the galaxy. The aliens did not want to imagine what human warfare would look like without restraint. After the peace accords were signed, Admiral Rodriguez asked President Chen a question that had been troubling him for months. Do you think they'll honor the treaty? Do you think they've really learned their lesson? Chen stood at the observation deck of the Indomitable, watching human construction ships begin the work of rebuilding damaged space stations. In the distance, alien vessels waited patiently for permission to enter what was now considered human-controlled space. They'll honor it, she said with quiet confidence, because now they know what we're capable of. They've seen what happens when you push humanity too far. She gestured toward the ruins of the Kethian capital floating in space below them. They thought we were primitive because we were young. They thought we were weak because we preferred peace. They thought we were easy targets because we tried to solve problems through negotiation instead of violence. Her voice carried the weight of 18 months of warfare that had reshaped the galaxy. Now they know better. They've learned that humans don't start wars, but we finish them. They've discovered that our preference for peace doesn't mean we can't fight. They've seen what human ingenuity can accomplish when directed toward warfare instead of exploration. Rodriguez nodded, but his expression remained troubled. And what about us? What has this war done to humanity? Chen was quiet for a long moment, considering the question. The war had changed humanity too. They had discovered capabilities they never knew they possessed. They had learned to fight with a ferocity that surprised even themselves. They had proven that they could be as ruthless as any alien empire when their survival was threatened. We've learned who we really are, she said finally. We've learned that we can be poets and warriors, builders and destroyers, peaceful explorers and terrible enemies. We've learned that our greatest strength isn't our technology or our intelligence. It's our refusal to give up when someone tries to destroy everything we've built. A communication alert chimed, interrupting her thoughts. The message was from Earth, reporting that 3 new alien species had requested formal diplomatic contact with humanity. They wanted to establish trade agreements, scientific exchanges, and mutual defense pacts. Word of the war's outcome had spread throughout the galaxy. Races that had never considered humans worthy of notice now wanted to be their allies. Civilizations that had dismissed human achievements now sought human protection. The galaxy has changed, Rodriguez observed. We're not the newcomers anymore. We're the dominant power. Every alien race will measure themselves against us now. Chen smiled, but it was a weary expression. Leadership had been easier when humanity was just another small voice in the council chambers. Now they had responsibilities to the entire galaxy. Then we'd better make sure we deserve the position, she said. We fought this war to protect our right to exist and grow in peace. Now we have to prove that we can use our power wisely. The Indomitable continued its orbit around the ruined Kethian world, a human warship keeping watch over the remnants of an empire that had learned too late that some species were better left alone. In the months and years that followed, the galaxy settled into a new order. Human colonies expanded at an even faster rate, but now with the blessing of species that had once opposed them, human technology advanced by studying captured alien equipment, but it was shared freely with allied races. The Galactic Council was restructured with humanity holding the position of military leadership that the Kethian hegemony had once claimed. But humans used that position differently, focusing on exploration and peaceful development rather than conquest and domination. Sometimes, though, when alien races forgot the lessons of the war and began to threaten human colonies or allied worlds, the galaxy was reminded of what humanity was truly capable of. Those reminders were brief, decisive, and absolutely terrifying. The war that was supposed to put humanity in its place had instead put humanity at the head of galactic civilization, and everyone knew exactly how they had earned that position. The age of human dominance had begun, forged in the fires of a war that aliens had started but humanity had finished.